northern Wisconsin, up in the boondocks. They have loggers in their church, 3 or 4 different crews.
Yeah.
So excited to see the slideshow. I've only been involved with CAM since December. Gazebo Sam was doing the area here till then for a number of years, and he got too busy and asked them to try to find someone else. So I agreed to see what I can do to help out. So you have a slideshow you're showing us, and should be some good information. So thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for this evening. Thank you that we can gather here. Thank you for this church house and for everyone that was able to come. Thank you for safety for Mike and his wife as they traveled. Just pray you would be with Mike. Bless him this evening. May you guide and direct, and bless him for his commitment to CAM and to just all the people he's blessed over the years. And we just thank you so much for this program, this opportunity to share together time of need. And just pray again a blessing on Mike, and just pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you. So my wife Evelyn does travel with me, and we do the public relations work for the mutual aid. And so that's our job description. And we also train the representatives, and so I had the privilege to be here back in December to meet with John and show him how we fill out the forms and go over details and stuff. And so, Evelyn and I do have the privilege to travel quite extensively and share with quite a few people. And I came across this little, could we have these lights turned off here? I think it's going to make it a little bit easier to see some of the slides. Did you say the one switch is over here? Oh, he'll get it back. Okay, very good. And so, I came across this little verse several years ago in the Beside the Still Waters devotional booklet. And I appreciated the way the writer had put the words together. And so I quickly made up a slide. In our next slide here, you can see that we are the other CAM. And yes, people do get us confused with Christian Aid Ministries, but we are a total separate organization. Somebody asked me a couple of years ago, well, Mike, how come you guys use the same letters that Christian Aid Ministries does? And I said, well, excuse me, we were here about 20 years before they came along. And so we are the original CAM. I guess that's our claim to fame, I guess. I like that verse in John chapter 13, verse 35, where Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. And yes, I think if we have that kind of love for each other that God intended for us to have, I think we will have a desire to reach out and help each other. And especially if somebody has a loss of some type. And you know, that's what mutual aid is all about, is just plain helping each other. And I think it can be a wonderful testimony to a community when people say, oh yes, that's where the Mennonites live. They help each other. And yes, our neighbors are watching us. Our neighbors watch us a whole lot closer than we're aware of at times. A number of years ago, my older brother had a real nasty chimney fire at his house. And you can see the firemen are getting their hoses stretched out, but they don't even have the water turned on yet. And that fire had a pretty good start. In the next picture here, you can see they got the water turned on and they're knocking it down. But you can see that fire burning out through the ventilator in the roof there. And that fire had a real serious start on things. It was a couple of months after this happened. And the people in town were still talking about how when that Mennonite family had their house fire, how the whole church pitched in to help them out. And you're probably thinking, well, of course we do that. We've been taught that all our lives, to help each other. Yeah, that's part of our heritage, isn't it? But you know, I think it's part of our identity as well. And I think it bears out the fact that our neighbors are watching us. And so a number of years ago, and some of you might remember when this happened, I think it was like 14 years ago almost, down here at Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I guess I might have my directions turned around here. Is that south? Okay, all right. I got to know what my directions are. But there was a real bad farm accident down here by Harrisonburg, Virginia. It was a middle-aged father and his wife and their 2 daughters and their hired man lost their lives in a manure pit accident on a dairy farm down there at Harrisonburg. I remember reading about that on my computer, on my Yahoo News. And I'm convinced that just the fact that it was a Mennonite family, the news reporters just sort of flocked in there, and they wrote extra articles about that farm accident. Because I remember over the next several days, there were about 3 or 4 different articles on the national news headlines about that farm accident. One of the writers, at the end of her article, and I believe it was a lady that wrote this particular article, but at the end of her article, she wrote, "The Showalter family lived in a quiet Mennonite community where the ladies hang up each other's laundry." And I thought, wow, now isn't that nice? Now maybe you ladies here in Lancaster, maybe you ladies hang up each other's laundry. Now up in Wisconsin where we live, the ladies don't do that very much. Well, I will admit that when I read that, hey, that caught me off guard. I remember sitting back in my chair, I read that the second time. I probably read it the third time, because I still remember, I was asking, now, why did that lady write that? And you know, I'm not sure, but I suspect that probably someone had told that lady that the Mennonites help each other, and she didn't know what that meant. But she was a writer, and she had to come up with something, and that's what it said right there in the national news. Well, and you know, I think it's all right to smile about that, but I think it bears out the fact that the people of the world know that we plain people have a strong sense of community. Now, maybe you're sitting there wondering, well, now, Mike, what do you mean by that? And hey, it's real simple. We care about each other. And yes, we demonstrate that in different ways, but one of the ways is by helping each other in time of need. But you know, sometimes it's just being there for each other in time of sickness or sorrow or death. Yes, when somebody's in the hospital, we go visit them. Well, we used to when they let us. Yeah, it's been a tough one the past year, hasn't it? And but you know, hey, when there's a death in the family, a death in the community, we go to the viewing. We go to the funeral if possible, just to be there for our friends and our family. It's because we care. And yes, of course, we pray for each other. But you see, it's because of this. This is why we practice mutual aid, because we care about each other. And I'm going to take it a step further because I'm convinced our neighbors see this. Our neighbors see this, and they envy us for this. They wish they had that kind of a relationship with their neighbors. Quite often, they don't even know who their neighbors are. Huh? Yeah. This is a very important part of our testimony to the community. Yeah. A little bit more on that later. But I don't think the idea of helping each other is a new idea by any means. No, and maybe it's even a throwback to the good old days. Now, many of us remember hearing our fathers and our grandfathers talk about how those farmers used to own that threshing machine together, and they took it from farm to farm helping each other. Now, ik ben zo jong, je hebt zo even dat kalfen dreschmachine feature. But hey, I've watched it already from a distance, and I know there was more than one reason those guys helped each other. That was a very labor-intensive operation. It took a lot of hands to make that operation run smoothly. And maybe I ought to just ask for a show of hands. Anybody ever help feed a thresh machine? Okay, thank you, very good. Well, even though I never helped feed a thresh machine, I still remember when I was a boy, I remember when the neighbor's barn burned down and how the whole church got together. We built a new barn for the neighbor man. Yeah, I had a couple chances to help bend a few nails on some of those projects when I was a boy. And hey, they were good days. We got a lot of work done in a day's time, but hey, there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fellowship. And yeah, of course, hey, there was always lots of good food to eat, you bet. Hey, they were good days. And you know, I think we're missing out on some blessings today. We don't do that so much anymore. And well, now, Mike, hey, not so many of us are farmers. We don't have as many opportunities to get together and help each other. Yes, that might be true, but you know, sometimes I think we have a little bit of an attitude. Yes, I need a new garage. I need a new shed. But sometimes our attitude is, I can afford to do this. I'll just call the pole building company and have them come and build my new garage for me. Instead of calling my brothers and, hey, we're going to frolic at our house Saturday morning. Why don't you all come and help us build our garage? Huh? Yep, I think we're missing out on some blessings. And I hope it's different here at Pequea. I hope you people look for excuses to get together and have a work day as a church. And a lot of blessings in doing that, yeah. And so I do have one more challenge for us tonight here. When John F. Kennedy was inaugurated President of the United States, he gave a challenge to the American people. And some of you might even remember when he said that, but I think that's the way he said it. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I'd like to just borrow from his idea tonight, and I would like to challenge us tonight. Now let's not ask, well now, Mike, what's this CAM outfit going to do for me, Mike? What am I going to get out of this thing? How's CAM going to improve my bottom line? No, I don't think we ought to ask that. We might be disappointed. But instead, I think we ought to ask, well, Mike, how can I reach out and help my brother that got hit by a tornado? He lives way down in Mississippi or out in Oklahoma. And we live way up here in Pennsylvania. How can we reach out and help him? Yes, I think it's when we start reaching out and helping other people. That's when God really starts blessing us in a special way. So I am very thankful. About 60 years ago, there were 3 ministers in northern Indiana, up there in the Middlebury area. Eli Miller was the bishop at the Town Line Conservative Mennonite Church. Daniel Bontrager, one of the ministers there at the Woodlawn Amish Mennonite Church. And then Clarence Yoder was the bishop at the Pleasant Grove Conservative Mennonite Church. And these men saw the need for a sharing plan. And it's no secret. All 3 of these men came from Amish background. They knew how the Amish people reach out and help each other when somebody has a loss of some type. And so, yes, and these guys saw the need for a sharing. They had a vision. And I honestly don't have all the details, but I can imagine them getting their heads together. Maybe it went a little bit like this. You know, the way we used to do it, we used to pass the hat. And yes, that was a good way. But you know, if we try to pass the hat every time a tornado hits somebody's chicken house down in Kentucky or Tennessee, or somebody out there in Kansas or Oklahoma gets hit with a tornado, if we'd try to pass the hat every time something happened, some Sundays we might have to pass it twice, maybe 3 times. Yeah. And furthermore, I wouldn't even know what my share is to put into the hat every time the hat comes around. And so I think these guys probably got their heads together. They were probably asking the question, hey, why can't we have an organized system so we can all pitch in and help? And so I know what my share is to put into the hat when the hat comes around. And so that was the beginning of the Conservative and Amish Mennonite Mutual Aid Society, is what they called it, way back in 1958. Well, today we just call it CAM Mutual Aid. Okay? But you know, today we still pass the hat. But we pass the hat twice a year. We pass the hat in January, and then we pass the hat again in July. And what my share is to put into the hat, my share is based on how God has blessed me. And so I make a list of my house and my furniture. I make a list of my farm buildings and my farm equipment, my livestock, my business and my business equipment. I make a list of that stuff. And then in January when the hat comes around, I pay an assessment. But it's based on what I have on my list. It's based on how God has blessed me. And so what my share is to put into the hat each might be a little different than your share or your share, okay? It's based on how God has blessed each one of us. And yeah, the Bible tells us, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. That's been our motto. That's been our motivation for many, many years. I like verse 10 in the same chapter. It says, as we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, but especially unto them who are of the household of faith. Yeah. So this is a picture of our office building. It's located out of Middlebury, Indiana. We do have 2 men that work full-time in the office there. There is one part-time lady that works several days a week at the office there. CAM's a church-based mutual aid. It was organized back in 1958. Today we still serve the conservative Mennonite churches, although unfortunately many of the churches in the conservative Mennonite conference are not very plain anymore, but 2 of those ministers were bishops in the conservative conference, so those people do still qualify to be part of CAM. We have many Beachy Amish Mennonite Beachy churches, fellowship churches, charity churches. We have quite a number of old order Amish people that are part of CAM. Many new order Amish churches. Guthrie, Kentucky, Ava, Illinois, Spencer was down here at Hampton, North Carolina, and you go out to western Pennsylvania there, Meadville, Conneautville. There's about 3 districts, and those new order churches are all in the same conference. They actually have ministers' meetings once a year. I have a lot of respect for those people. I get into their circles quite often. And so we also have German Baptist people, Dunkard Brethren, plain people. So we're not just exclusively Mennonite, but we are plain people. And yeah, CAM's a brotherhood sharing plan. Someone gets hit with a tornado, somebody has a fire, we all pitch in, we help share their loss with them. And no, we are not an insurance company. We do operate similarly to insurance companies in some respects. And yes, this takes the place of house insurance. Most banks are happy to accept CAM for your house insurance. But we do not insure any automobiles, we don't insure any trucks, and neither do we provide any liability insurance to our members. Now, liability is what pays for someone else's property. If they think it was your fault that their property got damaged, that would be liability, okay? We only pay for what our members own, okay? And so now, we are not suggesting that you don't need liability, but if you need liability for your business, for your property, you must purchase your liability insurance from an insurance man in town, okay? So we're just a brotherhood sharing. We don't offer liability. We have many members that own a business of some type. Quite often they are able to purchase what we call standalone liability. Quite often they can buy that from the insurance company they buy their truck insurance from or their car insurance from, okay? They can buy that liability even though they buy their fire storm aid from us, okay? And so, but we have a lot of people that don't own a business, all they've got is a house on a property, and it's been difficult for our people to be able to buy liability for just their house. The insurance companies don't want to mess with that. They really don't make much profit doing that, okay? And they'd rather not mess with it. And it's been a problem for our people. So several years ago, we came out with a little brand new, and we call it our Brother's Keeper plan. And so the purpose of this is to help share when someone is liable for someone else's property. So maybe you send your son out to burn the trash, or you got a brush pile out there you want to burn, and so you send your son out, or maybe you go out there and burn the brush pile, and about the time the fire gets going good, why the wind picks up and blows that fire across the fence, and maybe it burns down the neighbor's garage. Okay? But you're liable. It was your fault. Okay? And so now we have a brother's keeper plan. We can share it in those types of situations, even though it is a liability situation. Or here's another one. Maybe you've got neighbor children playing in your backyard, and boys like to climb trees, and the neighbor boy climbs the tree, and yeah, it happened. They fall out of the tree and break his arm and ends up in the emergency room, gets a $4,000 or $5,000 hospital bill. But it happened at your house. Something like that happens. Quickly, go over and talk to your neighbor. I'm very sorry it happened. We will pay all your doctor bill. We will pay all your hospital bills for you. Okay? And John has a little form that he can fill out and send it into our office, and perhaps we can share with you if something like that happens. Okay? So that's what we call our brother's keeper plan. And yet, you know what the Bible says? Agree with thine adversary quickly before he talks to his lawyer. Well, it doesn't really say that, but that's what it meant, And so, so that's what our brother's keeper plan is about. And so, no, this is not liability insurance. We're not guaranteeing you that we're going to pay your whole bill. And this is for our primary property only. So this is not for commercial businesses. Okay, this is just for our house and furniture, our primary dwelling. That's why we call it primary. And so, so this is not liability insurance, but it is a method of enabling us to share with a family that gets caught in that type of a situation. And so, but CAM does provide a ministry service opportunity to help fulfill the law of Christ by bearing one another's burdens. Excuse me. And yes, we do provide assistance to our members for property losses resulting from fire, storm, theft, earthquake, flood damage, many different types of damage that we share with our members. And yes, we offer financial as well as physical, moral support. And so we do have a board of directors that's made up of 9 men. And I'm not going to say much tonight about accountability, but yes, this is our accountability, if you will. These men meet 3 times a year. They keep an eye on the checkbook balance. They keep an eye on the number of claims that are coming in, and they make many decisions concerning the operation of CAM. Now, 3 of those men do serve on our executive committee. Our executive committee meets each month, and they review some of the claims that come in and make a lot of decisions. We do have real close to 300 representatives like John. We don't always have a representative in every church. We try to have a representative in every community where we have families that are members of CMN. And John is not the only one in Lancaster County. We have another one up just west of Reading a little bit, Moanton area there. We've got a representative there. We've got another representative up at Myerstown. We've got another representative over west of Lewisburg. And then there's another one out west. So yes, we've got a half a dozen represented in the state of Pennsylvania. Once a year we do have a business meeting out in the Goshen area, and all of our representatives are invited to attend our meeting out there in the Goshen area. It is our representatives that elect the men that serve on our nominating committee. Thank you. Yeah. The purpose of our nominating committee is just to draw up a slate of names ahead of time for our election process. We do re-elect our board members, serve a 3-year term. And so, so yes, every year we have an election for the board of directors. We do have 3 people on staff. 2 of them work full-time in the office, plus myself. And we do work very closely with a lot of different banks and financial institutes like Anabaptist Financial. Whenever a bank gives somebody a loan to buy a house or to buy a property or to buy some equipment or for their business or machinery or whatever, the bank is always interested in having their risk covered. And so it's a very common occurrence at our office that a banker will call up and they want proof of insurance on our family that's a member of CAM. And even though CAM's not an insurance company, most of the banks are happy to accept that piece of paper that we send to the bank. They call that an insurance binder is what they call it, that piece of paper. But it is federal law that if that banker gives you a loan for any purpose, he must have that piece of paper in your file that if anything happens to your house, the bank will get their money. And so we send that piece of paper to the bank, and most of the banks are happy to accept that, even though they understand that we are not an insurance company. And so we do have approximately 14,000 families scattered in about 38 or 40 different states. Property valuation that our members have listed with CAM runs somewhere around $5 billion on the north side of $5 billion. And hey, I'll be real honest, I'm not used to working with those kinds of numbers. I wasn't sure I knew how much that was. I'm not in the masonry business, Ben. I'm just not used to working with those kinds of numbers, okay? Shouldn't pick on Ben, but John said that Ben wouldn't mind too much. So $5 billion, that would be $5,000 million worth of property that our members have listed with CAM. Hey, God has blessed our plain people very richly, and I don't say that lightly. We have a great deal to be thankful for. Our assessments are based on the number of claims that come in. We do add on a tiny bit for administrative expenses, and we are trying to build up a reserve fund. About 15 years ago, there was a real bad tornado went across southern Indiana. And some of you have heard of Davis County, Indiana. And yes, Davis County was just about wiped off the map when that tornado went through there. And we have a lot of families there in Davis County that are part of CAM, and so we had like a little over $10 million worth of damage in that one storm there. And our kitty was not big enough to handle that one. And so our board of directors had to mail out a letter to all our families and ask everybody to make an extra payment to help pay all the bills on that thing. And so, and I still remember bringing that envelope in from my mailbox, and it was not a good time of the year. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, and that's not a good time of the year to get a big invoice that you weren't expecting. That one there just sort of hit you smack in the face. My wife and I had a little conversation about that letter, and but you know, I got off cheap. I would much rather pay an extra assessment than have my farm get wiped out by a tornado, huh? Yeah, I would much rather pay an extra something to have my house get wiped out by a tornado. So it is a little bit of a matter of perspective, isn't it? And yeah, a few of our members did kick up their heels and really dig in. I ain't gonna pay that. Well, anyhow, be that as it may, but okay. We are a mutual aid, and what that means is our members do understand that if there would be another huge catastrophe, there's always that possibility that we might have to pay an extra assessment. And but it has only happened twice in the last 62 years, and the other time was way back in 1965. Those Palm Sunday tornadoes went across northern Indiana, there, Goshen, Middlebury, Shipshewana area. We had a lot of families got hit, wiped out by those tornadoes. I was only 12 years old. I still remember when those tornadoes hit. But at that time, CAM was not very old. It was only about 6 years old, and so everybody had to make an extra payment that time. And so there has been twice, but we do not have underwriters insurance the way commercial insurance companies do. We have overwriters insurance. Amen. And God has been looking out for CAM blessed us very richly. And so we do have a great deal to be thankful for. We do have our enlistments divided into two groups. We have our primary, and this is where we list our house and furniture. And then we have commercial enlistments also. Now the reason we have them divided into two groups, we get a discount on our house and furniture. We only pay half price. on our house and furniture, okay? But it's only our primary dwelling. And so if you would happen to own a secondary home, like down in Florida, you got a house in Florida? No, you're not old enough yet. Oh, all right. But, or maybe somebody's got a rental house. Well, even though that's residential, those get listed on the commercial rate. That home in Florida, that secondary home in Florida, or a rental house, they get listed on the commercial. Or if you've got a hunting cabin up in the mountains there or something, I wasn't supposed to tell, was I? All right. But we list things like our lawnmowers, garden equipment, buggies, yes. We have quite a few buggies covered by four-wheelers, sporting equipment, that would include boat and motor, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, RV, camper trailer. Our church house, schoolhouse, they come in at the cheaper rate on the primary side. Okay? Our commercial, and this is where we list our farm buildings, our commercial businesses, and we do all kinds of business, sawmills, pallet shops, bulk food stores, restaurant, bakery, all types of commercial businesses. Inventory, whether it's raw lumber or whether it's finished product. Our inventory, we just list it as a lump sum figure. Don't have to break it apart. Rental houses, yes, they come in on the commercial rate here. Secondary homes, whether it's in Sarasota or you got one out in Phoenix, Arizona, that's fine too. Construction equipment, business equipment, tools, excavating equipment, logging equipment, tool trailers, yes, we list them all. And farm equipment, machinery, livestock, hay, grain, feed inventory. We offer builder's risk, and for our carpenters, contractors, as well as rental equipment. A number of years ago, one of our families down here in Monterey, Virginia, was building 2 brand new chicken houses. And before they ever started on the project, they told their CAM representative, now we're going to build 2 chicken houses, and we need builder's risk on these chicken houses while they're being built, as well as afterwards. And so this picture here was taken on a Saturday morning. And a couple hours later, and this is what it looked like. The wind got in there and raised up those trusses and slammed them back down again. And the wall blew out along the far side there, along the trees. That wall blew out. There were 240 feet of trusses there that were cracked and broken. And this happened about lunchtime on Saturday, and they shook their heads. It's going to take us weeks to get this all cleaned up. I think there's 13 churches in the Southeast Mennonite Conference there. Now, most of those churches are over around Harrisonburg area, but 3 of them are actually in West Virginia. And Monterey here was a mission outreach community there. But on Sunday morning, it was announced in all 13 of their churches, hey, we need volunteers tomorrow morning at the James and Brenda Helmuth farm. Bring your chainsaws along. Well, you look at the leaves on the trees there. This was in the fall, and the farmers were busy filling silo. And furthermore, they don't live at Harrisonburg, where most of the people, they live back at Monterey, about 3 miles from the West Virginia state line. If you want to drive from Harrisonburg back to Monterey, there's 2 mountain ranges you've got to drive. Switchbacks, 35 miles an hour, the whole 9 yards. Been there, done that. And so it's commitment if you want to drive back to Monterey. James's brother showed up about 7 o'clock on Monday morning, and James asked, anybody else going to come? He said, well, I don't know. He said, I did hear a couple guys talking that they might. There were 70 people that showed up to help. There were so many cars and trucks going in their lane that morning. They have a real long lane. So many cars and trucks going in there. The neighbor and his wife were watching, and their neighbor man is a retired police captain from Florida. And he's watching all these cars, and finally they got in their car and drove over there and said, what's going on here? How come you got so many people coming in here this morning? And they said, well, you come here, we'll show you what happened. They took them back in the woods. You can't see these chicken houses from the road. They took them back in the woods and showed them what happened. And the neighbor man asked, well, who are all these people you got here helping you? Well, they're just friends of ours. They're just volunteers. They're here. What do you mean volunteers? Aren't you even going to pay them? Well, yes, we're going to give them lunch in a couple hours. That man dropped his jaw. You mean there's still people that are willing to come and help without being paid? They went back home, and that lady pulled a couple bags of frozen cookies out of her deep freezer, and she fixed up a plate of cookies and sent her husband over there to donate that plate of cookies for the noon meal. And that man had tears running down his face when he handed them that plate of cookies. What a testimony. Did I say our neighbors are watching us? Amen. Our neighbors watch us a whole lot closer than we're aware of at times. They took the metal off the top of those trusses. They took the chainsaws and just cut them in pieces. And the boys stacked up the lumber along the sides. It took them 2 hours to clean it all up. They had an early lunch that day. My wife and I had the privilege to stop by here about 3 weeks after this happened, and James and Brenda told us all about it. They were very thankful for their mutual aid, and they sent me these pictures so I could share them with you. And when we got there 3 weeks, the roof was all done. They had the ceiling in the new chicken house. They were getting ready for baby chicks. And so they were very thankful for their mutual aid. Our assessment rates on our house and furniture, we assessed that at a rate of 25 cents per $100, or that would be $2.50 a thousand, okay? Somebody's got their house covered for $200,000, they would pay $500 a year. Half of it in January, half of it in July, okay? So it's $2.50 a thousand. On the commercial side, our farm equipment, machinery, that's $5 a thousand, okay? Deductible, if you have damage to your house, like a hailstorm ruins the shingles on your house or dents up that metal roofing all up, we have a $250 deductible on your house. You pay the first $250 and CM pays the rest of the bill for you. Okay, now on the commercial side, that deductible is 5% of the amount of the claim. You don't have to write these numbers. I've got some papers back on the table, by some white 8x11 paper with all these numbers on it. And so help yourself to those papers. And ladies, there's some hot pads back there. I think there's some little pan scrapers. Help yourself to those items back there on the table. And so upset and collision claims, yes, we do have a 10% deductible on upset and collision. I mentioned logging equipment, and maybe they're working on a pretty steep hillside, and somebody gets a little too shussly, and he cuts the corner too sharp with that big machine and lays it right over on the side. That happens once in a while. Now they got to get a big wrecker out there with a big winch on the back to set that thing back up again. If he wasn't quick enough to kill the engine, if that machine is laying there on the side and no oil getting to the oil pump, any mechanics here, it only takes a couple minutes to spin the bearings, and somebody gets to overhaul the engine on that machine, it's probably going to kill about $12,000 or $15,000 till it's all set. We are going to share the loss with him on that, but we're going to let him pay 10% of the bill on that one instead of just 5%. That's upset and collision. And speaking of logging equipment, now this is a very poor picture. It's awful dark. That does look like a wheel sticking up in the air, and yes, it is. Here's a much better picture. A front-end loader, and they had a forklift on it, and they were cutting down this great big tree, and they had a fork. They had that boom way up in the air, and they had a fork on each side of the tree to push it. And guess what, Chris? They forgot to tell the tree it's supposed to go that way, and the tree decides to go this way and lays that big machine right over on its side. Hate when that happens. Yes, okay. Our buildings should be listed at current replacement cost, and this is part of John's job. If you're interested in signing up your house or your buildings with CM, you get a hold of John. He's got the forms to fill out, and he'll help you decide. Now, when we say replacement cost, like if you'd have a total loss on your house, how much would it cost you to hire a contractor to come in and build you a brand new, just like what you got right now? How much would it cost? And so that's what we try to list our house for, is replacement cost, okay? Whatever amount you've got your building listed for, that is the amount that CAM will share with you if you have a total loss on your building. Whatever amount you got it listed for, okay? Most often, it's not a total loss. It's much more common that we just have a partial loss on a building. So for that reason, we do stipulate that a building does have to be listed to at least 80% of replacement cost in order to get full coverage when there's a partial loss. If you've got questions on that, you can talk to me afterwards. I'm going to keep moving here. Any item that you have, piece of equipment that would be more than $1,000, we do list those items separately. So, no, we don't have to make a list of the blender and the toaster and the electric skillet. We don't do that. We just put down a lump figure for your furniture content, like $20,000. Unless you've been married for 30 or 40 years, we'll put down $30,000 or $40,000. But we just put down the word miscellaneous to cover all of them small things. Same way out in the shop, the hand tools and stuff, we just put down miscellaneous tools and things on all those small things. And so rental, maybe you go to the equipment rental place here and lease a piece of equipment once in a while, whether it's a big backhoe or maybe one of those big jackhammers, air compressors, or one of those scissor lift scaffolds or a forklift. You are liable for that piece of equipment. When you drive out the driveway there at the equipment rental place, you are liable for that. And so all you have to do is give John a quick call and say, hey, John, I'm going to go lease a piece of equipment. I need coverage on it. It's very reasonable. If that's a $60,000 piece of equipment, it'll cost you $25 to have that machine covered. We actually cover it for a whole month. Even if you're only going to use it for a week and a half or 2 weeks, you would be covered up to a month, okay? But it's very reasonable. If that's a $60,000 piece of it, it would cost you $25 to have that machine covered. And no, we don't plan on those things happening. Nah, nothing. But you know, once in a while it does. And that's embarrassing when that happens. I hate when that happens. And so I even know that guy that's standing up there at the end of the trench. And that's not Mike either, in case you thought that looked like Mike. That's not Mike, but I do know that man. And hey, it can happen. It can happen. Hail damage. This happened about 6 years ago out in Farmington, Missouri. That's a Bethel Fellowship Church out there in Farmington, Missouri. They had hailstones the size of baseballs, golf balls and baseballs dropping out of the sky. I saw a pickup truck, and I think that pickup truck was 2 years old. It was sitting outdoors when that hailstorm went, and the roof came, all the windows were broken out. It did a real number on that pickup truck. And them hailstones aren't always smooth and round. They've got sharp, jagged edges, and so that vinyl siding didn't stand a chance. And this was actually on the end of on a different house. But we did pay to replace the sheet metal on quite a few metal roofs as well. So, I think we know what that is, don't we? Yeah, we know what a tornado is. And this happened about 8 years ago. 2013, yeah, it'd be 8 years ago, April, last month. And this is the J. Hoover farm, Jay and Shirlene. Now, Shirlene's parents lived there at Macon, Mississippi. Now, Jay is a Lancaster boy. He's a brother to Richard Hoover from the Muddy Creek Church over here. Richard's one of the ministers. Richard's got, a building material business or something there? And Jay is a brother to Richard. But this is Jay's farm out there in Mississippi. And let me just step back here a little bit. Their house is way up here at the top. They had a large implement shed. He had just built a brand new farm shop about a year and a half before this happened. Had big overhead doors on that end of the building. On the side back there, he had an overhead door where he could back the semi in. Cotton harvester and combine. Here you can see where these grain bins used to sit. They farmed a couple thousand acres of soybeans and corn and soy, and some cotton as well. And now the best part of about a quarter mile back across the fields here, they've got 6 chicken houses side by side, broiler houses. And those broiler houses were not hit. And so we were very thankful for that. His wife was at home, Shirlene was at home when, just before this happened, son-in-law drove up to the house in his pickup truck, ran inside, there's a tornado coming, you have to leave right now. They don't have a basement under their house. It's because of the soil type. They have very few people in Macon, Mississippi put basements under their houses. And just get in the car, drive it, they did. Her daughter was actually there that morning for a little bit with a couple grandchildren. They grabbed the children, got in the car, drove down the road 7 or 8 miles, and 10 minutes later, this is what it looked like. Nobody got hurt. We were very thankful for that. This was in the shop. That's a cotton harvester machine. There you see how it wrangled the cab on the front of that machine. Yes, it did a real number. This was that implement shed. It had steel girders on it. Here you can see what was left of the grain bins. And this was what's left of the house. They had just remodeled their house about a year before this happened. They had a sign above the fireplace, "For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways." I'd like to try to explain something. When something like this happens, hey, we're all human. And we ask, God, don't you care? Where are you, God? That meant a great deal to them. That sign was still in place there above the fireplace. My wife and I had the privilege to stop and visit with them about 4 months after this happened. They told us about that, how much that meant to them. Yes, hey, we're all human. We need the brotherhood. We need to encourage each other and be there for each other when somebody has a loss of some type. If you do have damage of some type, you call John. He'll come and look at your damage, and he'll ask 2 other brethren that are also members of CAM. He'll ask them to look at the damage and sign that little claim form that we have, and John will email that claim form to our office, and Thad at the office, he'll write the check the next day and drop it in the mail. And so no depreciation on equipment. Whatever amount you have that equipment listed for, that is the amount that we will share with you. We don't come out and depreciate it and say, oh no, you've had it for 6 years, and I know you paid $20,000 for that machine, but you've had it for 6 years and we have to depreciate it. We're only going to pay you $10,000 for it. No, we don't do that. Whatever amount you've got your equipment listed for, that is the amount the CM is going to share with you if you have a total loss on that piece of equipment. Okay? And yes, we do have more loggers in our church than we do farmers. And this is what they call a forwarder. Well, they call it a packer back is what they call it, but so that machine's got a loader on it there, that grapple on the end. This is what they use to pick up the 8.5-foot sticks out in the woods, because them big processor machines cut the tree down and the tree falls over, and then that processor machine has wheel that spits the log out, and they push a button and cuts it off at 8.5 foot long and push the other button, and those wheels spit it out there again. The computer tells those wheels when to start and stop. All they gotta do is push the button and spits it out there, and they push this button, whack it off, and so they got a nice little stack of 8.5-foot sticks. This machine comes along and picks up the whole and puts it on the back of the machine, on the bunk back there, and hauls it out to the road so the semi trucks can back in there and load it up, see? And so this is what they call a packer back. And that thing caught fire out in the woods on a Monday morning. They did have a fire extinguisher. They tried to knock it down. It was too hot. They couldn't get it. It toasted that machine. The engine, hydraulic pumps, hydraulic motors, it was a total loss. You can see how it roasted that cab there. And so brand new today, you'd spend over $400,000 for a machine like that today. He did buy it brand new, but it was 8 years old. It was half worn out. At that time, he had it on his list for $100,000. Is what he had it on his list for. Happened on a Monday. Saturday, the check was in the mailbox for $95,000. We have a 5% deductible on commercial. He had it listed for $100,000, so the check was for $95,000. But the check was there on Saturday. The following Tuesday, he went and bought a used machine so he'd get back to work again. And so he was very thankful for the quick turnaround. We do cover trailers, all types of trailers, tool trailers, utility trailers, even camper trailer, boat trailers, even semi-truck trailers. And the liability on a trailer is covered by the insurance policy of the truck that's pulling that trailer. So anytime you hook a trailer, any type of a trailer, you hook it behind a truck and you start down the highway, if that trailer would fishtail and cross the center line, and hit an oncoming car, it's the insurance policy of the truck that pays for the damage to that oncoming car, okay? Now CAM is gonna pay you for to repair your trailer or to buy a brand new trailer. CAM is gonna pay you for the trailer. But to pay the damage to that oncoming, that's the insurance policy of the truck that's pulling the trailer. And that's the way it is in all 50 states. And so, yes, we do. This was a big pallet shop fire about 3 years ago over here at Middlefield, Ohio, Joggy County up there in northeast Ohio. And yes, it was a big pallet shop, and it was a total loss. That happened on a Saturday afternoon. And so fire, yes, we need fire extinguishers. Well, we hope we don't need them. But yes, we should have them. Much cheaper than buying a new house. Huh? Yeah. It's part of good stewardship. If you don't have a fire extinguisher in your house, don't go to town and buy one. Buy 3 of them. Buy 5 of them. Those things are really cheap. And it's embarrassing to have a fire if we didn't even have an extinguisher close by, huh? Yeah. And so we have a charity fund grant program at CAM to help families that have an emergency of some type. No, they didn't have a fire. No, they didn't get hit with a tornado, but they had some type of an emergency. Maybe somebody got hurt on the job and he was off of work for 3-4 months. Maybe they had a huge medical bill. And so our charity fund is a matching grant. We leave it up to the individual congregation. If your church decides, hey, look, this family had an emergency and it's serious, they need help. So why don't we lift an offering to help them? And if your church decides to lift an offering to help that family, we'd like to pitch in and help too. And so we'll match the church's offering. Okay, it used to be up to $1,500. A couple months ago, we raised this figure from $1,500 up to $3,000. We will match the church's offer up to $3,000 to help that family. And see, the beauty of it, we're letting it up to you guys to decide how serious the need is. That's the beauty of it. And we've had this for about 9 or 10 years, and it's been a very nice way that we can show appreciation to our, they don't even have to be members of CAM. Back up here a little bit. Whoops. Yeah, they do not have to be members of CAM. Whoop. They don't even have to be a member of your church. If they've been attending regularly and you decide to help them, we'll match the offering. And so that's our charity fund. We actually set up a special account at CAM, and we're taking 1.5% of all the funds that come. We put 1.5% into our charity fund account there to help out in these areas. If we haven't personally had to experience that kind of a trauma, sometimes it's difficult for us to imagine what our brother is really going through. But we need to be there for them and offer them compassion and encouragement. So yeah, when disaster strikes, whether you've got a fire or you get hit with a storm, CAM's here to help. That used to be a house. That picture was taken in Davis County, Indiana 15 years ago. I don't think I can imagine what it would feel like to come home. That's all you got left right there. I don't think I can imagine what that would feel like. But CAM's a vehicle that helps us be able to reach out and help others. And mutual aid is an attitude. It's a privilege to help others. There are many blessings to be shared from working together as a brotherhood, so that's why we're here. We do have a website. You can go online, cammutualaid.com, and our guidelines, constitution, you can look at it on your computer. So I know that some of you are part of CAM. Thank you for being part of us. And again, our website there, cammutualaid.com. I told John I would give an opportunity. Anybody's got any questions on anything, you're free to ask. Now, we do have cookies and milk down in the basement, children, so we don't want to drag this out. So I'll be around. You can ask me